Welcome to the broadcast, my fruits. Hello, my pretties. Talking about wicked witches. Did you see on the royal family website, the press have been going crazy about this apparent demotion of the Dumbartons. At the bottom of the barrel they are. You know, if you take a shovel and dig and scrape away at the very bottom of the barrel, that's who you'll find there. That's who you'll uncover, the Dumbartons. And there they are. And I found this rather amusing. Now look, all this is just happenstance. It's just happenstance. It's not in any way contrived. Who would ever suggest such a thing? But isn't it? And let's put the Duke of Kent aside, because we all know how wonderful and virtuous he is. It's just an unfortunate accident that he happens to be next to the Dumbartons. But also the disgraced Andrew appearing there. But even Andrew pointing a finger up as if to say, have you seen what she's got on her head? That beret's giving her the finger. Watch it. So that was quite fun, wasn't it? Now, do bear in mind, my dear, a lot of people pore over these kind of things. That website is never especially current. It's not administered by the king. It's not like he's online every day checking over every detail of it, because it also didn't escape my notice that Prince Harry, when you go into his section and look at his blurb, they still refer to him on there as His Royal Highness, which, as we know, belongs to him, but he's not publicly styled that way anymore. So a lot of these things just haven't been updated. It's not as crucial to those behind the scenes as it might be to some of us. So I don't read too much into it. Anyway, we'll return to the Harkles in a few moments because we've got a lot to catch up on, and also I'm going to do a tip jar corner towards the end of the video because some of you like that, and we'll be speaking about this ever so comfy and cosy jacket that I found. Isn't it absolutely exquisite? I don't know if it translates very well on camera, but it is the coziest thing that I've ever bought. I think it is so cozy. Anyway, more on all of that later. I've got to make a quick correction first, because on the last broadcast when I mentioned Her Majesty's grave at the Memorial Chapel, I insinuated that it would be withheld from public viewing and that you could only go to the chapel and not see the area of interment within the chapel walls. Well, naughty river, it seems that I was wrong there, and as you've probably already seen, hundreds have been queuing up at Windsor to get a glimpse of the late Queen's place of rest. And I must admit, I did rather like the idea that in death she would have that solitude, that sanctuary to herself, without the public filing past, but I'm sure she knew what was going to happen. That was part of her wishes, so there she is, still there for the public to go and pay their respects to. A really lovely tribute to the Queen has emerged, though, on a coin, a new coin, two of them actually, a 50p version and a £5 coin, commemorative, it's a double monarch, which I believe is a first in history, to sort of ring in the new and see out the old with love and affection. Charles on one side, with the King's effigy, created by Martin Phillips, and by the way, this was done not with a live sitting, but by photograph, which is rather unusual. But it seems that that's all that was required, and the images were presented to the King after the Queen's death for approval, and they were signed off. And as you see, the monarch faces the opposite direction to the predecessor. They'll be in circulation before the end of the year. Now, by the way, that Latin description that you see surrounding the effigy, Charles, the numeral for the number 3, then D.G. Rex F.D., £5, 2022. It translates in full as King Charles III, by the grace of God, defender of the faith. On the reverse of the £5 coin, you'll see two lovely portraits of the Queen, one captured at springtime and one in the glorious winter season. And on the reverse of the 50p coin, you'll see designs that were featured originally on the coronation crown. 4 quarters of the royal arms depicted with a shield separated by emblems of our home nations. So a rose for England, a thistle for Scotland, a shamrock for Northern Ireland, and the humble leek for Wales. Random penguins ain't going to be happy, are they, my dears? Random penguins ain't going to be happy. They're not happy, if reports are to be believed. Now, we all know that this new Netflix show featuring the Dumbartons. The Dumbartons, at home with the Dumbartons, is perhaps going to focus on their love story. Because that's a story we've yet to tell. Isn't that what Meghan told the Cut magazine? That one of the pieces of her life that she's not yet been able to share with the public was her love story with Harry. Who needs you to share it? Rachel, who needs you to share it? Ain't you ever heard of oversharing? What they're saying is that this memoir was due to drop in about 6 weeks' time, in December, following immediately on from The Crown in November. And you may recall that I told you some months ago what I'd heard is that the plan was always for it to drop as one great big bonanza, one after the other, the sort of cavalcade of revelations, basically. Archetypes, At Home with the Dumbos on Netflix, and Harry's Old Beano. This tome, the first of three. But random penguins are having fits at the moment. Now, these reports come from page 6, but they've been proliferated everywhere, so make of it what you will. Apparently he's desperate to edit. He's been in touch. Desperate. He wants to delay the release until next year. Sounds like he's very nervous. They quote a highly placed Netflix insider who said Netflix has been keen to have the show ready to stream from December. There's a lot of pressure on Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos, who has the relationship with Harry and Meghan, to get this show finished. And another Hollywood industry source said a lot of conversations are happening. I hear that Harry and Meghan want the series to be held next year. They want to stall. The Daily Mail also reported on this, and they said that a source had told them that Harry has thrown a spanner in the works. He is keen for refinements in light of the Queen's death, her funeral, and his father Charles taking the throne. There may be things in the book which might not look too good if they come out so soon after these events. He wants sections changed now. It's not a total rewrite by any means, but he desperately wants to make changes, but it might be too late. Don't say we didn't warn you, Haribo. We tried, desperately, in vain, to try and get the message through. No one was at home. We knocked. We rang. We tried to kick that door down to warn you what you were doing. You put your fingers in your ears, didn't you? Rachel, 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 Rachel. Not listening, not listening, not listening. We tried to warn you. It fell on deaf ears. Princess Catherine, on the other hand, has been showing us what royal duty and service, uncomplaining, unflinching, is all about. She welcomed sailors from the Royal Navy, and she wore navy blue with a white blouse. Looked absolutely glorious. She hosted an audience at Windsor, because she lives on the estate now, doesn't she, at Adelaide? So she's just a stone's throw away from the green drawing room there, where she managed to greet, oi, sailor. Hello, sailor, my dear. She invites them into the fold, and they're all delighted to be in her company. And she's not the only class act that's been out and about doing sterling work, because our darling Sophie was seen in her first visit to headquarters in her role that was newly given to her earlier this year, the role that belonged to the Duke of Edinburgh for over 50 years, her beloved father-in-law of late. She now takes over as Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers. She was seen at the Prince Philip Barracks. A wonderful chance to meet with officers and soldiers, and I did see that they sang her praises very highly. Very highly. Okay, if you want to hang out with me for a few moments longer, it's time for Tip Jar Corner. Okay, let's see what trinkets and bits and bobs I've picked up this week. These are all from my local charity shops and, of course, the Vintage Fair. Secondhand Susie says hello to everybody. I really loved this. It's like beautiful grey silver raindrops on a lovely drizzly day. They look slightly smoky as well when they jiggle about. Actually, they have some smoky beads running along the top, but I love the sort of teardrop, raindrop design. Multifaceted, nice chunky big stones, and I'm excited and looking forward to wearing that around the neck. This one reminds me of Heart of the Ocean, you know, on Titanic, when our Rose flings it into the sea, into the ocean, ne'er to be found again. I'd dive right in after it, my dear, wouldn't you? Yes, this Heart of the Ocean. I was just drawn to it because the colour, and the colours of all these items that I show you here never translate that spectacularly well, but it's a really beautiful, rich, almost lapis lazuli blue with various layers inside of it that you can't see that well here, but a beautiful blue glassy heart, and I'm quite enchanted with it. Actually, it shines a sort of indigo-ish violet in various lights. Wonderful. As usual, if I show you anything here that I've shown you before, you have to forgive me. I forget what order I buy and show you things in, but I really don't think I have shown you any of these items before, maybe one. But this is a purple choker, and it has wonderful, it looks quite pink on camera as well, but it's a rich purple, very royal. You've seen this one, I wore it in the last broadcast, I think. And lovely square, chunky gemmies there, aren't they? Very simple and very rich, because some of the darker stones like these, when they're a dark purple, they don't always come across so well, but this one did show up quite nicely, I thought. Now, I'm going to get onto the subject of this jacket, because this was my star find of the last month. I don't know why, well, I know why I'm excited about it. It's because it is so cosy to wear. You know, I walked past it. It was in a charity shop window, but this particular charity shop is not one that I frequent. It's always full of quite grim finds, to be honest with you. Nothing ever very inspired, let's put it that way. But this one was in the shop window, and when I first glanced at it, well, I liked the look of the peacock feathers, but I thought that it looked rather cheap from a distance. I imagined it was some sort of felt fabric. And I saw on the price tag, this was actually £25, which is a lot for an English charity shop. But I went inside anyway. Curiosity got the better of me. And when I felt it, I immediately could feel that it was quality. It was really good quality. Although, I have to say, I'm going to show you the logo that's on the pocket, because I actually don't like that. I want to remove it, because I want to keep this, and I might actually remove it. I don't like logos of any kind, and I don't want it on there. You know, I've fallen in love with it. You're probably going to tell me someone out there might recognise the logo. I know it's only very faint. It's hard to capture, but one of you might recognise the logo. I can't tell what it is. It's so faint. If you recognise it, let me know. You'll probably tell me that it's from some junky sort of cheapo designer label, but I've got to tell you, it feels so luxe. I actually, before I saw that logo, I thought it might have been handmade by someone, because the lining is exquisite. It has a sort of polar bear design. There's no label in the collar, but it is so, I can't tell you how wonderful the fabric feels. The fabric is so soft and thick and warm. It actually feels warm when you touch it, not when you're wearing it. When I touched it in the shop, it felt warm, and immediately I wanted to be out sort of doing the gardening in a pair of nice welly boots. This is the kind of thing I'd wear, you know, together with a sort of turtleneck jumper or something. I'd shrug this on and a pair of gloves and go pruning in the bushes. You know, I can imagine Camilla rather enjoying it, to be quite honest with you, while she's having a go in the hedges with Charles. I think she could have a good old hoedown with this on. But I love the colour, love the design, love the fit, and yes, that was a spectacular find. Made me very happy. Now that autumn is here and winter's on the way, I won't be suffering in the heat anymore. I won't have to put on the electric fan when I'm recording. I usually begin to freeze in a couple of months, so that's a different kind of problem, but I'll be very much into jackets, I think. And this was a really nice sort of tunic affair that I found, with a nice cream colour and gold piping. For some reason, the sort of texture of it and the faint glimmer of the gold reminds me of various garments from the 1970s, but I think that will make rather a grand tunic and look quite royal, especially with a lovely brooch on one of the breasts. So I thought that was lovely. This one I wore for you in the last broadcast too, I think, around the shoulders, and you'll be seeing more of it because it was a lovely find. This was from the Vintage Fair, This cost a bit more than the charity shop jobs, but I will be wearing this again and again. It's so royal, with golds and purples, very sort of Scottish colours, one could say, actually, like the thistles and the heathers. A lovely sort of goldish background. I love the designs. I love the collar. It's a sort of firm fabric that fits very well, and I think it would be rather versatile. And this was a very substantial piece which I wore for you recently, which looks like it's from the Vintage Fair, but actually I think this was a charity shop job. I think I got a really good bargain price for this one. And this is very useful because when I want to wear black, I need to differentiate myself between myself and the dark throne behind me. So chucking this over the shoulders will always help with that. And it has very detailed beading here. Swirly designs and sort of mountains and apexes and triangles and curlicues. And I thought it was rather enchanting. I'm almost embarrassed to show you this one, dear, because it's just a flimsy sort of disco, cheapy old top from the charity shop. But it might come in handy. I'm sure I'll be able to wear it under a nice blazer or a jacket for you, and it just gives that little ping of colour, doesn't it? Those nice strands of a sort of disco-y red in a nice design. This is that purple sequin gown that I wore recently, which is so scratchy to wear. It's such a disappointment. Do you know what? I look hot as hell in that gown. It just clings to my curves, my dear, my slender curves. My bum looks great in it. And with a nice pair of high heels, I was doing the disco around the room, and there's just something, you just can't beat sequins, can you? They're so cheap, but yet so fabulous, and it's all about light, isn't it? And the way that, just like a jewel, the way that the facets throw off the light, and you just turn into this sort of shimmering, phosphorescent, illuminescent will-o'-the-wisp that shimmies and shines on the dance floor in front of the bathroom mirror, or wherever your fancies take you, my dear. But I love it. I think it's really nice, really gorgeous. So a really nice bundle of finds, which I always enjoy sharing with you. And also I picked up a book. I've got quite a few books actually on Edward and Mrs. Simpson, but it's one of those topics I never really get my teeth into. It's the kind of book where I'll go through a couple of chapters and then forget about leave them open. I've got about 50 books on the go. It's one thing that drives me crazy. I never, it's seldom that I manage to get through a whole book because something else takes my interest. But I'm determined to get through all 600 pages of this, 600 pages plus, because it's good. I've started it off and I'm enjoying it. The Windsor Story, I picked it up for £5. I think it was published in 1980, so it's not, what's this? A bookmark. It's not an ancient one, but these writers, J. Bryan III and Charles J.V. Murphy, had very good form. They knew the Windsors personally and were entertained by them on many occasions. I believe they had involvement with the Duke's official memoirs, the Duke of Windsor, and also Wallace's The Heart Has Its Reasons that she published. They were both involved in the writing of those. So they knew them very well, had amazing insights on royalty in the families, and I've enjoyed the few chapters I've got through. And I'm just going to read just a tiny bit, not even of the actual book, but by way of preface it begins, because you can't help but think of the Dumbartons during these passages regarding Edward and Mrs. Simpson. Just try and imagine the Dumbartons in Montecito, because the author here is speaking about Edward and Mrs. Simpson, their life after they left the royal family in their later years, and it just really brought to mind what might go on with the Dumbartons of Montecito. Being in their company, whether at cocktails beside the pool at the mill, or at their smiling table, or over coffee in the library, walled with unread books, was like watching a brisk comedy of manners, with a famous actor and actress playing the roles in which their fateful love affair had cast them. The longer we looked on, the more revealing and, on that account, the more unreal and pathetic it all came to seem. The century's most celebrated romance was fraying before our eyes. The Windsor's court was changing with the years. Though the favourites were richer than ever, their ranks were increasingly made up of pushers, climbers, trimmers, tag-end aristocrats and mere celebrities. There was an element of determination in the gaiety. The folk tale had gone awry In such company the Duke lost his former kingliness, bit by bitter bit, and his intended queen was hardly to be recognised as a modern sister of the shepherdess who, in the timeless tale of enchantment, having succoured the leader, defeated in battle and bound up by his wounds, sent him forth to regain his kingdom in duty and honour. The Duke's kingdom had now shrunk to the Duchess herself. For him and her there was nothing beyond. Each had ended by defeating the other. The position she craved he had forfeited irretrievably in order to have her. The love he craved she could not give, perhaps because she did not know the emotion at its deepest and purest. And it goes on and on for a while, but then the last paragraph of this introduction says, by then illness was crowding him. Perhaps he had a premonition of the cancer that was imminent. There may have been another reason, more compelling. The Duchess had begun to ridicule his poring over old letters. She once taunted him in our presence. Who'll want to read about a boyhood as dull as yours? Can't you imagine Markle saying exactly that about his tome? Well, maybe that's a bit harsh, but certainly in a few years' time I can imagine her sinking to that level. But that might be my imagination. Who'll want to read about a boyhood as dull as yours? It's a waste of time. She could not bear to have him return in spirit to an era and to events in which she had no part. So I won't be able to help myself from looking out for rather keen comparisons during this tome. Maybe it serves as a bit of a warning of what might be to come at the Dumbartons of Montecito in the coming years. I thank you most sincerely for joining me today. I wish you an absolutely beautiful weekend ahead. Have a glorious time. Thank you so much for all the juicy comments. I'll be trying to catch up on many of them this weekend. Thank you most sincerely to those of you who left a tip in the tip jar, which is in the description box below. I'll see you next time, and toodle pip.